I sat across from the parents who forgot me, dropped a photo of my real family on the table, and said, "You don't get to return just because I became someone you can brag about. Hi, I'm Lauren." And when I was 15, my parents gave me up without ever saying the words. They built new families, handed my room to babies, and acted like I'd vanished by accident. Now, I run a company helping kids like I once was, lost, overlooked, forgotten. But the moment I made it, they came back. Would you have answered that email? Would you have gone to that dinner? Tell me, what would you have said to the people who only show up when you're finally shining? Drop your thoughts below. I'm listening. They never said, "We don't want you," but they didn't have to. I disappeared one missing ride, one closed door at a time. Back when I was 10, Mom used to call me her little rock. Sturdy, quiet, always there. But over time, rocks get left in the dirt when people move on. No one thinks twice about the things they step over to get where they're going. It was October 2015, and Eugene, Oregon, was dressed in its usual fall colors. Crisp leaves, jack-o'-lanterns softening on porches, the air smelling like burnt sugar and cinnamon. At 15, I was living a split-screen life, bouncing between Mom's house and Dad's condo, like some kind of court-ordered ping-pong ball. Mom had remarried 2 years ago. Her new husband, Greg, liked quiet evenings and didn't say much to me beyond polite smiles. Their baby girl, Hazel, cried through most nights. My room had slowly become her nursery. First, it was the crib, then the mobile. Then one day my desk disappeared to make room for a changing table. No one even asked. Dad's place wasn't much better. He married Vanessa, who gave birth to Lily just a few months ago. He was over the moon. Our little blended family, he kept saying, as if the word blended excused the way I no longer had a space of my own. The room I once slept in became Lily's, complete with lavender walls and stuffed animals that stared like sentinels. I was moved to the pull-out couch in the living room, where I'd wake up with a kink in my neck and the sound of morning cartoons in my ears. One night, I came home from school to find Vanessa rocking Lily by the window, humming a lullaby. My lullaby. The same one Dad used to sing to me before everything fell apart. He caught me staring and smiled like nothing had changed. A week later, my English teacher reminded me about a group project due Monday. I had left my binder at Dad's place. When I asked Mom if she could drive me over, she sighed. "Lauren, I have Hazel all afternoon. Why didn't you think of that before?" When I asked Dad, he texted back, "Busy. Can't. Ask your mom." No one came. I failed the assignment. Another Saturday, I asked if we could go to the pumpkin festival. It used to be our thing. Mom said she had a headache. Dad said he was taking Lily to her infant yoga class. Even the fridge felt indifferent. That afternoon, I opened it to find a single sticky note. "Gone for groceries. Back soon." It had been 3 hours. I sat at the kitchen table waiting. My phone buzzed once. A reminder from the school app about an upcoming parent-teacher night. I stared at it, then turned the phone face down. Later that night, after Greg and Mom came home, cheeks flushed, arms full of grocery bags and baby toys, I said I wasn't feeling well. I went to my room, closed the door, and stared at the ceiling. It hit me then. No one was coming. So I grabbed my hoodie, stuffed some clothes into a backpack, and walked out. No one stopped me. No one even noticed. I walked 3 miles to Margot's house. The leaves crackled under my sneakers, the wind tugging at the hem of my jacket. I passed houses filled with laughter, light, and the smell of baked apples. When I finally reached her front porch, I hesitated. Then I knocked. The door creaked open, and there was Aunt Margot, in slippers, a mug of tea in one hand. She looked at me for a beat, then stepped aside. "Let me get you something warm," she said. She didn't ask why I was there. She didn't ask what happened. She just made cinnamon toast, the kind I hadn't had since I was 8. Thick slices of white bread, toasted just right, slathered with butter and sprinkled with sugar and cinnamon until it glistened. She placed the plate in front of me like it was the most natural thing in the world. The kitchen light was soft, amber. The air smelled like vanilla and something steady. The contrast from my parents' houses, the cold, blue-white LED bulbs, the constant noise, the never-ending shuffle, was jarring. Here, time felt like it had paused to let me catch up. I took a bite. It melted on my tongue. I looked up at her, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can I stay here for a while?" Her eyes didn't widen. Her lips didn't quiver. She just nodded and pulled another chair up beside me. When I ran away, no one begged me to come back. But when I came home, I got a lecture, like my absence was the real problem. I didn't leave to make a point. I left because I was tired of making excuses for people who'd already written me out of their story. It was February 2016, and Salem was soaked in rain. Gray skies, wet sidewalks, the kind of cold that seeps into your sleeves and lingers in your bones. I hadn't packed much. A backpack with 2 t-shirts, a phone charger, and $23 in crumpled bills. No plan, no destination, just not there. I texted Ellie, the only friend who wouldn't ask too many questions. She lived in an apartment over her aunt's garage. She opened the door in fuzzy socks and handed me a blanket without a word. For 2 nights, I crashed on her couch. Her aunt asked who I was. Ellie said, "Cousin." That was it. I turned off my phone on the second day, not to be dramatic, just to breathe. On the 3rd morning, I woke up to the sound of Ellie whispering, something about the police. I sat up and she turned, face pale. "Your mom called the school. You didn't show. They think you're missing." I nodded. "I should go back." The walk from Ellie's to school was just over a mile. I didn't rush. I watched the rain glide off metal mailboxes and gathered puddles. My shoes squelched at every step. When I got to the front office, the secretary's eyes widened. "Lauren?" Principal Mathers came out. "Let's call your parents," he said, leading me into his office. The walls had faded posters about effort and grit. I stared at the one with the cat hanging from a tree branch. "Hang in there!" Mom picked up. "Oh, thank God," she sighed. "You scared everyone, Lauren." Dad's voice came through on speaker later. "This was completely irresponsible. You humiliated us." Not once did anyone ask, "Why?" That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, Hazel crying down the hall, Greg on the phone about quarterly numbers, and I couldn't breathe. The walls felt too close, the ceiling too low. My throat tightened. My hands trembled. I called Margot. I don't remember what I said. I just remember the sound of her car pulling up, wipers thudding against the windshield, headlights cutting through the mist. She didn't knock. She didn't wait. She walked in, looked at me, and wrapped me in a towel even though I wasn't wet. "Let's go," she said. We drove in silence. I stared at the raindrops racing down the window. At her house, she handed me her old Yale sweatshirt and let me sleep in her room. She took the couch. The next morning, she made chamomile tea and asked me one question. "Do you want me to step in? Officially?" I nodded. She filed for emergency guardianship within the week. The court hearing was 2 Thursdays later. It was cloudy, cold, and everything smelled like old paper and coffee. I sat in the back of the courtroom between Margot and a social worker I barely knew. Across the aisle, Mom sat in a beige sweater, her hair too neat, her lips too tight. Dad sat 3 benches behind her, looking bored. They didn't sit together. They didn't even look at each other. They just waited for it to be over. The judge, a woman in her 60s with a stack of manila folders, looked over the paperwork. She asked a few questions. Margot answered gently, clearly, with no bitterness in her voice, just facts. When she stamped the final page, it was loud, final, like a door slamming shut. I expected tears, from someone, from me, but there was nothing, just air. No one hugged me, no one said goodbye, no one looked relieved or regretful. They just left. I watched as Dad glanced at his watch. Mom stood up and immediately started texting. Hazel's name was on the screen. They had other lives to get back to. Back at Margot's, I climbed the narrow stairs to the guest room, my room now, I guess, and found the closet door ajar. Inside, on the left hook, hung a small red coat with embroidered daisies on the pockets. I hadn't seen it in nearly 10 years. I called downstairs. "Margot?" She looked up from the newspaper. "Yeah? Why'd you keep this?" I asked, holding the coat out. She didn't miss a beat. "Because I knew you'd come back. Eventually." That night, while brushing my teeth, I noticed something in the holder, next to Margot's old purple toothbrush. A new one had been placed. Mine, blue, still in the wrapper. Later, after she went to bed, I took the old house key to Dad's place from my bag, the one he gave me when I was 12. I walked into the bathroom, lifted the toilet lid, and dropped it in. The splash echoed louder than I thought it would. I stood there for a moment, staring at the water, at the ripples smoothing out. Then I flushed. And just like that, I wasn't his responsibility anymore. I stood on stage, holding a national award. The only person I thanked didn't share my last name. The spotlight was warm, almost too warm. It made my palms sweat against the smooth lacquer of the wooden podium. Below, rows of folding chairs filled the high school auditorium. Students shifting in their seats, parents craning necks for pictures, teachers murmuring to each other about how bright these kids are. White Christmas lights looped above like garlands of frost, and the windows along the sides of the room were fogged from the breath of so many gathered bodies. Peppermint cocoa steamed in paper cups along the back tables. And there I was, 17 years old, in a navy blue dress Margot and I had found on sale at a local consignment shop, trying to remember how to breathe. They called my name again. I stepped forward, heels clicking against the floor. Mr. Elkin, my English teacher, gave me a small thumbs up as I passed. I reached the microphone and looked out, not for recognition, not for reassurance, just to see who I was speaking to. Not Mom, not Dad. They didn't know I had entered the National Youth Writing Contest. They didn't know that I'd stayed up 3 nights editing my short story about children who float between houses but never land. They didn't know that I'd been selected out of over 2,000 entries across the country. They didn't know, because I didn't tell them. But Margot was there, front row, middle seat, wearing a pearl gray cardigan and a proud, tear-bright smile. When our eyes met, I felt a quiet calm settle in my chest. The MC passed me a small gold trophy shaped like an open book and gestured for me to say a few words. I adjusted the mic with both hands, cleared my throat, and took a deep breath. "I want to thank the judges," I began, voice steady despite the tremor I felt in my rib cage. "And my teacher, Mr. Elkin, for reminding me that writing about something painful doesn't make you weak. It means you survived it." I paused. The auditorium stilled. My fingers curled tighter around the trophy's base. "And I want to thank the person who showed me that love isn't something you earn. Some families are given, others are chosen, I was lucky enough to find mine. The crowd clapped politely, some louder than others. But I wasn't looking for applause. I was looking for release. After the ceremony, there were pictures, smiles, compliments, a group photo of the finalists, a solo photo of me holding the trophy in front of a red velvet curtain, and one picture that mattered most, Margot hugging me so tight it pushed all the air out of my lungs, her cheek pressed to my temple, her eyes squeezed shut like she was holding back something too big to say out loud. The next day, the local paper featured a short article under the headline, "Salem Teen Wins National Writing Contest." There was a photo and a quote from my speech. It ran on page 3, right next to a story about the high school basketball team's winning streak. I didn't expect anyone to notice, but people did. Dad sent an email titled, "Proud of You." Inside was a $10 Starbucks e-gift card and a message. "Way to go, Lauren. Keep pushing forward. Let's catch up soon." "I don't drink coffee." Mom texted, "Saw your article. Congrats. We should talk." No punctuation, no warmth, just suggestion. I stared at the message for 5 seconds. Then I deleted it. No hesitation. But not every message felt hollow. Tina Park, a girl from my algebra class 2 years ago, DM'd me on Instagram. "Hey, I read your story on the school blog. I cried. I'm the oldest kid too. Always felt like the leftover. Just wanted you to know I started learning to code because of you." I didn't reply immediately. I just read her message again and again. That night, it snowed. A soft, early winter snow that blanketed the street in white and muffled all the usual city noise. Margot and I walked home from dinner, her treat to celebrate. She wore the same coat she'd had since I was in elementary school. One button was still sewn on with blue thread instead of brown. She never changed it. About halfway down our street, she paused, reached into her coat pocket, and pulled out a folded slip of paper. Without a word, she handed it to me. It was small, creased, and smelled faintly of chamomile. I opened it under the porch light. "You were never invisible to me." It was written in her neat slanted script, the one I recognized from birthday cards and lunchbox notes back in 3rd grade. I didn't say anything. I just slipped it into the inside pocket of my coat and followed her up the steps. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the framed photo from the ceremony. Me and Margot, faces pressed close, laughing like no one else existed. I turned the frame slightly, no longer facing the window, no longer hoping someone outside might look in and see it. I didn't need to be acknowledged. I needed to belong. And I did. Right here. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, showing the dashboard of the project I'd been building for nearly a year in silence. Empowered. It wasn't glamorous. Just a beta version. Bare bones but functional. It offered free peer tutoring, mental health checklists, and journaling prompts for teens who were drifting through the same silence I had been. At the top of the dashboard, "Welcome to EmpowerEd. Beta launch begins." I didn't post it anywhere. No big announcement, no press release, just a quiet beginning, a door opening. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, I was warm, whole. And this time, I didn't need anyone to clap. I never posted about my company, but success has a way of slipping into people's feeds, especially the ones you didn't invite. We'd just gotten the app through beta. EmpowerEd had officially launched a month ago, with a quiet rollout in 2 school districts across Oregon. No billboards, no fanfare. Just well-placed emails to guidance counselors and a promise. Free, personalized, judgment-free support for students who feel like they don't belong anywhere. It was working. I was 21, working full-time in a co-working space in downtown Portland. Our office was small, just a glass corner unit on the 6th floor with a view of the Willamette River if you craned your neck right. We had 2 desks, 1 couch, a whiteboard covered in flowcharts and sticky notes, and a table where Tina kept a rotating stock of organic trail mix and sparkling water. That morning, I arrived to find Tina bouncing slightly in her chair, grinning like she knew something. "Check your email," she said. I set my backpack down and opened my laptop. There it was. A journalist from a local education magazine had published a profile on EmpowerEd. It was called "From Discarded to Disruptor: How One Oregon Teen Built a Tool for the Forgotten." It told the story in full. How I'd grown up between houses, how I'd left my parents' homes at 16, how I'd spent weekends tutoring kids at the library while quietly learning to code. How Margot had saved me. How EmpowerEd started as a PDF of advice, emailed to one high school sophomore who couldn't focus because her mom forgot to pick her up again. I didn't expect it to make noise, but it did. Tina posted it on our LinkedIn and Twitter accounts. She tagged me. She captioned it. "Couldn't be prouder of the human who made this possible. Lauren Davis, you are the reason this exists." I stared at the post for almost 2 full minutes before I even clicked like. That was enough. Within hours, the article was shared, reposted, screenshotted. My name appeared in dozens of notifications. Some from former teachers, some from classmates I barely remembered, some from people I hadn't seen since middle school. A few of them wrote messages. "Saw your article. Wow, you're killing it. Didn't know you were doing all this, congrats." And then came the one I wasn't ready for. Subject: "So proud. Let's reconnect." From Richard Davis. I froze. His name alone made my throat tighten. My father hadn't used that tone in years. Proud? I wasn't sure he'd even used my name in a sentence without comparing me to someone else since I was 13. Then another notification popped up. A comment. This time from Mom. On Tina's LinkedIn post, Deborah had written, "So proud of Lauren. She's always been meant for great things. Public, performative, vague." The same woman who hadn't responded to my birthday message last year suddenly remembered how to use emojis. I didn't reply. Not yet. I sat there, rereading both messages until the words blurred. Tina noticed my stillness. She leaned over cautiously. "You okay?" I nodded slowly, then said, "It's like success didn't bring them back. It just gave them an excuse to pretend they never left." She gave my shoulder a small squeeze. "You don't owe them anything." I knew she was right. And yet, that night, I found myself at the office long after everyone had gone home. The city lights twinkled through the windows, casting shadows on our cluttered desks. Outside, a light drizzle tapped against the glass. Portland in spring. I reopened the email from Dad. It was brief. 3 paragraphs. He said he was proud. He said he'd been following my journey. He said he wanted to catch up, maybe dinner sometime soon. No apology. No mention of the years between us. Just praise. It felt like being offered a seat at a table I'd already set on fire. Still, I opened a new message window, typed 1 sentence. "Let's have dinner, one time." Then I deleted it, typed again. "Sure, we can meet." Too cold. Delete. "I'd like to talk. Maybe." Too vulnerable. Delete. It took me 6 drafts before I came back to the original line. "Let's have dinner." One time. I stared at it for another full minute, then hit send. I didn't sign it, "Love Lauren." Just my first name. Just enough. When I got home, Margot was sitting in the living room, glasses on the tip of her nose, flipping through an old gardening magazine. She looked up as I kicked off my shoes. "You look like someone who just swallowed a whole lemon," she said. "I emailed Dad," I replied. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "On purpose?" I gave her a look. She smiled gently and didn't say more. Upstairs, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in a long time. Personal archive. There, buried under job offer letters and tax documents, was the email Margot had sent me the night I won that National Writing Award. Subject: "You shine for you, not for them." Body: "Don't let their silence make you shrink. You were always made for more than surviving. Now go build something." I read it 3 times. Then I booked a reservation. Bistro Clementine. Every Sunday before the divorce, we used to go there as a family. They had crusty bread served in paper bags, jam in tiny glass jars, and lemon risotto that always arrived steaming. I remembered one time when I spilled a whole root beer on the table and Mom sighed like I'd broken something precious. Dad laughed. That was before things went quiet. The reservation was for Friday, 6:30 p.m. Table for 3. I didn't know if both would come. I didn't care. I stared at the confirmation email on my phone, then locked the screen. There was no nervousness, no bitterness, just a steady calm. I wasn't walking into that restaurant to be accepted. I was walking in to let them see who they missed. They said I looked just like my mom. That night, I felt like a stranger sitting next to 2 more. It had been nearly a decade since we'd all sat at the same table. Bistro Clementine hadn't changed much. Same cracked leather booths, same yellowed wallpaper with painted vines curling toward the ceiling, same soft jazz drifting like smoke through the dining room. The menu had been updated slightly. The butter still came in little porcelain dishes shaped like pears. I arrived 10 minutes early, my heart calm in a way that almost surprised me. I wore a black sweater and jeans, no makeup, no effort to impress, just clean lines, comfortable shoes, and a wallet that could pay for whatever I ordered. They were already seated when I walked in. Mom wore a beige coat with her hair twisted neatly into a low bun. Her eyes darted up before she smiled too quickly, too wide. "Lauren?" she said, standing as if we'd seen each other just last week. Dad followed, rising from the booth with a polished grin and a hand extended like a politician at a campaign event. He wore a navy blazer and a silver Rolex that glinted under the overhead lights every time he moved. I slid into the booth across from them. The leather stuck slightly to the back of my sweater. "We ordered your favorite," Mom said gently, gesturing to the menu. "Lemon risotto and their warm bread. You used to love that." I didn't correct her. I hadn't eaten lemon risotto in years. For a few moments, no one spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was clinical, like the kind you hear in waiting rooms or elevators. Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister Lily is in 5th grade now," he said. "She loves writing. Must run in the family." "Hazel just started piano," Mom added. "She asks about you sometimes." "That's nice," I replied. Dad reached for his glass of wine, taking a slow sip before saying, "We're just really proud of you, Lauren. What you've built. It's incredible." Mom leaned in slightly. "Everyone's been talking about that article. I printed it. It's on the fridge." That surprised me a little, but not enough to change anything. Dad chuckled, adjusting the cuff of his shirt to reveal his watch again. "We always knew you were smart. You just needed the right direction." I didn't respond. I reached for my water and took a small sip. The bread arrived. I didn't touch it. The waitress came by to drop off our meals, smiling politely and asking if we needed anything else. I thanked her. She nodded, then walked away, leaving behind 3 plates and a strange, sticky weight in the air. I looked at the food untouched. The lemon risotto still steamed faintly. The smell was nostalgic, but hollow. "Lauren," Mom said softly, "we made mistakes. We know that. But we're here now. We want to be in your life again, if you'll let us." There it was. The line. The offer. I reached into my bag and pulled out a white envelope. I placed it gently on the table between us. Mom blinked. Dad looked down at it like it might explode. I didn't say anything at first. I let them open it. Inside was a photograph. It showed me and Margot standing on a wooden dock by a lake, laughing under a golden sun. I was in shorts and a t-shirt, hair braided over one shoulder. Margot wore her old straw hat and had her arm wrapped tightly around me. Behind us, the lake shimmered like glass. Our smiles were real. "This," I said quietly, "is my family." Dad's mouth tightened. Mom looked away, blinking hard. "You weren't there," I continued. "Not when I needed help. Not when I called. Not even when I stopped calling." "You ran away," Dad said, voice low. "I left," I corrected, "because it was the only way to save myself." Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. I wasn't angry. I had no heat in my voice, just air. "You don't get to return just because I became someone you can brag about," I said. "You weren't there for the chapters that mattered, so you don't get a seat in the ending." No one moved. The music shifted to something slow and mournful. The butter dish had tipped slightly against the breadbasket, leaving a tiny curl of yellow on the linen tablecloth. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a folded check. I placed it neatly beside my plate, enough to cover the entire meal, plus tip. Then I stood. Neither of them reached out. Neither said my name. They just sat there, eyes flicking from the envelope to the check to the empty space I left behind. As I walked toward the exit, the smell of lemon and rosemary followed me. The hostess nodded politely as I passed. The door opened with a familiar chime, the same one from all those Sundays, long ago. Behind me, the meal remained untouched. The photo, creased now from fumbling fingers, was still stuck halfway beneath Dad's water glass. The condensation from the ice slowly began to warp the paper. I didn't look back. Outside, the sky was gray, but the air was fresh. I zipped up my coat and started walking. Toward the Max station, toward Margot's, toward home, toward... Some people leave porch lights on for those who might return. Mine was left on for me, even when I wasn't coming back. It was late spring in Salem, the kind of day where the breeze smelled faintly of grass and tulips, and the trees swayed like they were nodding to some joke only they understood. Margot's house sat steady behind its white picket fence, windows open just enough to let the smell of lemon muffins drift into the neighborhood. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, a half-eaten slice of banana bread beside me. Jayla was hunched over a practice slideshow, nervously clicking through slides for her history presentation. 16, sharp, quiet, with a spark that reminded me a little too much of myself at that age. She paused on a photo of Harriet Tubman, then turned to me. "Were you ever angry?" she asked. I looked up from my tea. Her tone wasn't accusing, just curious. "Yes," I said simply. "I was angry for a long time, mostly at them, then at myself, then at the fact that I didn't know who to be if I stopped being angry." She nodded, turning back to the laptop. "Are you still?" she asked, eyes never leaving the screen. "No," I said, "not anymore." Outside, the sky was beginning to shift into that soft gold of early evening. The porch light clicked on automatically, casting a warm puddle of light just beyond the front steps. I glanced out the window and smiled. Jayla closed her laptop and began packing up. "Thank you," she said, "for the help and the banana bread. Anytime." As she left, her shoulders were a little straighter. I watched from the screen door until she reached the gate, then turned to go. Back in the kitchen, Margot was transferring muffins from the tin onto a cooling rack, humming something familiar, an old tune she used to whistle when doing dishes. The scent filled the air like a memory you didn't know you missed. "You remember when you used to cry into your toast?" she asked without looking up. I laughed. "Which time?" She grinned. "There were a few. One time you said it tasted like soggy failure." "Sounds like me." We laughed again, easy and full. It wasn't the kind of laughter that erased things. It was the kind that folded around them gently, like a blanket over an old scar. I rinsed my mug and set it in the sink. Just then, my phone vibrated on the counter. One new email. Subject, just, "Thank you." It was from Hazel. "Hi, Lauren. I know you don't know me well, and maybe this is weird, but I wanted to say I saw the article about Empower Ed. Mom showed it to me, and I kept reading it over and over. I think you're brave. I want to be like you someday. I just wanted you to know that." No signature, just her name in the sender line. I didn't reply. I didn't even think about replying. I just saved it. Then closed the app and set the phone down beside my tea. Later that night, I went to my room, the one Margot had painted pale blue 5 years ago when she turned the guest room into something more permanent. On the shelf above my desk sat a framed photo from the award ceremony years ago. Me and Margot grinning, her eyes squinting from joy. I picked it up, gently opened the back, and slid the photo into a new frame. This one set beside a group picture of our team at Empower Ed's official launch. One photo born of survival, one born of creation. Both mine. I stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool, but not cold. A breeze lifted the edge of my sleeve as I leaned against the railing. The porch light buzzed softly above, casting a halo across the steps. I thought about all the versions of myself who had once stood here, crying, lost, grateful, silent. I thought about the little girl who once asked Margot, "Do you think people really change?" She had answered, "People reveal. Then they decide who they want to stay revealed as." I hadn't understood it then. I did now. The porch behind me glowed in warm yellows and soft shadows. The house smelled of muffins and something steadier, belonging. I used to think I wanted an apology. Turns out all I needed was a home that kept the light on. Sometimes the warmest places in our lives aren't the ones we were born into, but the ones that left a light on, waiting for us to find our way home. I didn't get the apology I once dreamed of, but in the quiet porch-light glow, I realized I didn't need it anymore. We all long to be seen, especially by those who should have noticed us first, but healing, I've learned, doesn't always come with grand gestures. Sometimes it's a cup of cocoa, a framed photo, or the simple act of choosing kindness over bitterness. If this story has touched something in you, maybe a memory, a person, or a place, I'd love to hear about it. Let's keep the porch light on for each other, always.